This is the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ty Higgins. With an eye toward reducing the estimated 20,000 yearly agricultural fires across the U.S., Nationwide and Ohio Farm Bureau offering members thermal imaging cameras, a new free tool that can pinpoint potential fire hazards on the farm. Joining us this week on the podcast, Ryan McCallick. He's Director of Property Engineering within Risk Management for Nationwide. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ty.
Chris Tagarellis, Inside Sales Manager for FLIR. How you doing?
Good. Yourself, Ty?
Doing all right. And a man who needs no introduction between Ohio Farm Bureau members, Tim Hicks. He's Nationwide Services Field Director for Ohio Farm Bureau. Mr. Hicks, always great to see you as well.
Likewise, Ty. Thanks for having us.
This is exciting. You know, we're in the Christmas season, and a lot of Ohio Farm Bureau members are going to have this new toy at their disposal. So, Chris, before we get into these thermal imaging cameras, tell us more about your company, FLIR, and about this new tool that's going to be available to Ohio Farm Bureau members.
Sure, absolutely, Ty. So FLIR's been around for as long as thermal imaging has been around, we'll put it that way. So we started back in 1978. Most popular image back then was, I think it was an 82 Volkswagen Bug that we had a liquid nitrogen cooled camera towing around that massive thing for something that, let's put it this way, would be on your flip phone back in 2002. So it's come a long way since then. Now the cameras themselves are size of your phone, if not smaller. So availability obviously has become much more accessible or easily accessible, we'll put it that way, which also drives down the price point and the actual intuitive or ease of use for the cameras. So FLIR's been around since 78, developing systems. We did get purchased by Teledyne back in 2021. I bring that up because we actually added quite a few different companies under our tool belt, including X-Tech and L Acoustics. And then we have FLIR and Ray Marine as those steady eddies, if you will. But with that, we have new and exciting things coming by, not only in the thermal imaging world, acoustics, but I'll get down from the soapbox of FLIR. But that, as in a nutshell, we are the thermal imaging company from back in 78. That's still around.
You mentioned that that cell phone aspect of it. These things aren't very big anymore. Talk to us about this particular piece of equipment and what we're seeing with that technology today.
Yeah. So with that, we have a variety of different cameras. So we do anything from test and measurement to high-end research. What we've found mostly in agriculture, though, is more of the C5, FLIR 1, or the EX series is kind of that sweet spot. Affordability, ease of use, but still highly effective in spotting some pretty serious events that you can prevent, we'll put it that way. So we can see heat. With that, obviously, we can detect where heat rises and where those potential fires or problems that could cause fires. But as far as you said, I mean, yeah, we have things that can actually attach to your phone too. So we have a FLIR 1 Edge that can just clip onto your phone, stream to your cell phone. And again, it's a thermal camera. You can just link up to your phone and it's that easy to use. If not, we have the standalone units, similar to the C5, where you would it is its own standalone unit. Size of a cell phone, fits in your back pocket, can turn it on and off as you want.
Can't wait to talk about the uses of this type of technology in agriculture. And Ryan, county farm bureaus began lending the cameras to members a little bit earlier this year through a new program sponsored by Nationwide. How long has Nationwide been using these thermal imaging cameras, and why is it so important to give Ohio Farm Bureau members an opportunity to utilize this type of technology?
Nationwide's been using the technology for probably just shy of 10 years now internally. Post-coronavirus, we kind of made a push to really expand our thermal imaging program beyond just utilization of our internal employees, but actually trying to promote the use of some of our members here at Nationwide. A lot of you are probably aware that Nationwide is the largest insurer of farm and commercial agribusinesses in the United States. So we're always kind of looking for technologies that are out there that kind of help protect the assets that really matter most to our members. And thermal imaging is really just one of several technologies that we have available to kind of meet that goal of protecting what matters most to our members.
Tim, we talk a lot about business solutions when we talk about the value of being an Ohio Farm Bureau member. How does this program and this technology fit into that conversation?
So I think it's a tangible example a real life example of us delivering that value proposition, which is in essence that promise to our members that we're going to help make you better. We're going to help deliver a competitive advantage. One of the ways that we do that is through our member benefits and various services that we offer. Thanks to our friends at Nationwide, and through our relationship with FLIR for this thermal imaging project, we've got a camera in every county in the state, and it's available for you to try out. It's available for you to see if it's something that you find useful. See if it's something that actually this is a technology that is going to be able to be deployed on my farm, and it's going to help me not have any downtime. It's going to help me address an issue before I have a catastrophic loss. I'm going to be able to find that electrical issue and not have the confinement building burned down. So these are things, and Ryan kind of mentioned it. All of those ag innovation, those technologies that are available, we're really just anxious to kind of continue to learn and to kind of deliver that value message and deliver those insights directly to our members to help make them better.
Chris, I don't have to tell you that there's all types of new technology in agriculture, between $1 million combines and the software in there to make farmers more productive and sustainable. Farmers and those in rural Ohio, no stranger to new technologies. But when it comes to these thermal imaging cameras, how intuitive is this piece of equipment and how easy is it to use?
So I think we were joking earlier, Ty, that it's if you can use a cell phone nowadays, you can easily use a thermal camera. I mean, we like to make it simple because even though thermal imaging can get complex, we don't want it to be something that is over your head. I mean, we want it to be something you start the camera up, I point it at something that I suspect has a problem, and I can tell right away, is there an issue there that I need to address or not? Again, we do mostly bread and butter is the electrical side of things because we can see that easily. But listen, that's not to say you can't save yourself thousands in faulty vents, exhaust fans, or even just simple things like insulation, moisture detection. You don't know that your barn roof is about to cave in, sink in until you hear that noise in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. So it's one of those things that I forget the saying, but we're trying to shift the mindset more to prevention of these issues more than, how to just deal with them when they occur. So with that, we're trying to get affordable, low cost, something in your hand that's easy to use and that you can easily take out if you find or suspect there's an issue and validate if you do have any valid concerns. Now, I'm not going to tell you by any means that if you see something hot on an electrical cable, take your Phillips head screwdriver or your flathead and try to tinker around it. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you want to look, determine if there is a problem, you call an electrician, and obviously that's addressed safely, appropriately, and avoids any mitigation or risk that you have in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's no doubt the perfect risk management tool for those types of situations. And Ryan, Chris talked about some things maybe off the farm. How have you seen this being used in the field in agriculture? And what are some examples of areas where farmers could put this thermal imaging camera to good use?
So I'll give you some broad applications, and I also maybe have some more specific applications that we found have been really useful on the farm. But broadly speaking, it could be used to find like electrical malfunctions in the farm. So any sort of devices, switches, wiring connections, potentially it could make it known that you have some sort of issue with those types of devices. Electrical mechanical applications, if you're monitoring some of the motors, for example, on your farm, that would be an example of an electrical mechanical application. Belt rubs, and that can be in the context of like machinery, stationary machinery, or mobile machinery like your combine. So we could be looking at something like a grain conveyor or a combine. Other kind of broad uses, self-heating of your stored grains or hay. Potentially you could identify any hot spots that's occurring in those with the cameras. Gas leaks and piping. If you have propane systems on the farm and you suspect a leak, this might be one of the ways you could verify that that's happening. We don't use the cameras for this application, but I understand animal health potentially is another use for these cameras. Like I said, that's not something we necessarily dive into, but I've heard of it being utilized that way. And I just want to give or yield one really specific example since I talked about this broadly. I think Probably one of our best finds was in a bucket elevator that was in a commercial grain elevator. And while they were actually loading unit trains, we discovered they were having a belt rub within that bucket elevator. And I don't know why. I had done the survey that day, and when the camera was telling me that there's a hot spot on the casing of the bucket elevator, I have no idea why. It was my first instinct to lick my fingers and touch the casing of the bucket elevator to kind of verify, is this really hot? Sure enough, the camera wasn't lying. It was very hot and burned my fingers. And it's a great example because if you think about a bucket elevator, I guess more commonly called a grain leg, it's a piece of equipment that exists on a farm where all the elements for an explosion are present under normal operating conditions, except for one, and that's the ignition source. So these thermal imaging cameras are a great tool to identify if maybe you have a potential ignition source that you didn't bank on that type of equipment. In this story, in this particular application, it has a happy ending. After we found this hotspot for the customer, they immediately took the piece of equipment down, tightened up the belt, and we returned just a couple hours later and kind of verified that belt rub was fixed, and it was.
I'll throw this out to you and to Chris. Is this type of program being done elsewhere in the country, or is Ohio ahead of the curve here?
You want to take this one, Ryan, or I mean, I can. So I mean, I
Go ahead,
will.
Chris.
I'll maybe speak out of turn. You are ahead of the curve. We'll put it that way. We have made this available. I will say Tim and the Ohio Farm Bureau has done a great job at running with it. So even though you're presented with something, adopting it and actually making it available to your members are two very different things. So though we do have a couple other sites we're in talks with, Ohio is definitely ahead of the curve. So I can put my name on that. We'll put it that way.
So, Tim, how does this program work? If we have members listening now to the podcast, they want to take advantage of this thermal imaging camera, how do they go about doing it?
Yeah, so we're trying to make it easy. Now, this is a pilot, so we're testing this out to see how it works, see where the issues are. But really, just contact your county farm bureau. So every organization director has one of these, and it's up to the county county offices to kind of figure out logistics and how to pick it up. The only kind of requisite that we have is that you kind of sign an agreement similar to what you would do if you were to check out kind of a tool from your local library. We have a user agreement that you sign off on, and then we ask that you complete a survey when all is said and done. What did you use it for? Did you find anything useful? Just to give us something of value back. And really, it's that easy. Just contact your county farm bureau, give it a shot, try it out. We've got videos for you to watch. We've got a tutorial, some guidance for you to kind of be able to kind of go forth with confidence in testing it out and pilot and trying out the technology.
Brand new technology, free for Ohio Farm Bureau members. Again, contact your county farm bureau to find out more about getting this thermal imaging camera in your hand to check out things on the farm, in the house, wherever you think there might be some issues. You can get to it before it becomes a bigger problem for you and your operation. Ryan Mihalik, Director of Property Engineering within Risk Management for Nationwide, Chris Tagarellis, Inside Sales Manager for FLIR, and Tim Hicks with Ohio Farm Bureau, our Nationwide Services Field Director. Thank you all so much for being on the podcast, and happy holidays to you.
Thank you, Ty.
Thank you, Ty.
Who feeds your need for new ideas for your family's best farm future? Ohio Farm Bureau. We work with our members to shape ag policy that will positively impact our industry. Farm Bureau is advancing business solutions to give you a competitive advantage. We help you gather information to stay ahead of important topics and technologies. Plus, Ohio Farm Bureau creates opportunities for growth. Ohio Farm Bureau, feeding your need for new ideas.
As the nation's #1 insurer of farms and farm families, Nationwide has long been a reliable resource for rural America. And while the current surge of data, technology, and globalization promises incredible growth potential, each new opportunity is shadowed by rising threats like security breaches, GMO contamination, and supply chain failures. This business is about adapting. It demands a protector just as forward-minded. It demands Nationwide.
This is the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. Thanks for watching, listening, wherever you might be. I'm Ty Higgins. Today we're at Ohio State's Ag Policy and Outlook Conference, really a chance to find out all about the important challenges and issues facing agriculture and look ahead to 2025 and see how things might shake out for farmers across the Buckeye State. Dr. Margaret Judlowski joins us. She had a focus on ag employment, and it's something that is ever changing. Every time you and I talk, we have different numbers and different stats, but what kind of changes have we seen in the number of ag workers over the last year?
So the most important and most relevant thing that has occurred over the last year is a really significant increase in the number of agricultural equipment operators. So when the government provides data on agricultural workers, they provide three different categories: one for crop workers, one for livestock workers, and then you can think of your more high-skilled equipment operators. And that is the group that we've seen really significant rise in the numbers of those people who are being employed. And this is exciting news because last year when we were talking about concerns we were having about increases in construction, pulling people out of those jobs towards industries like construction or even transportation.
So why? Why do we see an increase in that particular segment of agriculture?
So it's two parts to every story, and so when you look at the numbers, they're going up, but then when you look at the wages, those are going up even more. And so we imagine that this labor supply response is a response to those increased wages. So there's a trend, and equipment operators' wages have been trending up, but the wages for this year in particular, so the 2023 wage data, it's like a trend shift almost. So it's a significant increase in the rate at which wages are growing for those workers. And now the average equipment operator in Ohio is earning more than $27 an hour, average.
You broke it down though into the other segments as well. What's everybody else within the sector making?
So wages for crop workers and livestock workers have been growing, but it's a much more stable and now seems to be sort of bouncing around, hovering around $15 an hour. So in my talks last year and maybe even the year before, I talked about how $15 an hour seems to be the new reference wage almost, where everyone sort of knows that that's the amount that can be earned in food service or working at the gas station. And so our unskilled farm workers seems to be hovering right around there. But equipment operators has taken off and doesn't show signs of coming back.
What do you attribute all this to?
Honestly, there's a lot of response to the pressure from those other industries. So I think that agricultural operators who are making labor decisions have recognized that there's increased competition, there's a declining supply of workers, and they need to do something in order to keep people on the farm. And so it's going to hurt when it comes time to pay that wage bill, but it's at this point one of the only levers that you can really pull to keep people on the farm.
Well, and for some farmers, you can't find that labor locally. You have to go somewhere else where the H-2A program comes in to bring in labor from other parts of the world. What are we seeing as far as workers in that category and wages in that category as well?
Yes, so H-2A, the program has really taken off in Ohio and states like it. So other, traditional non-users of the program, so states that are more heavily, producing grain, a little more producing dairy, those programs typically you don't see, those types of farms typically are not users of the H-2A program. That has really changed since the pandemic, and now the numbers of H-2A workers in Ohio actually exceed the number of non-H-2A workers, and that's really a sort of new trend since the pandemic, and that growth in that program has really not slowed down at all. Now, in terms of their wages, that's, like I said, there's two sides to every coin. They are coming at a higher cost. And so the AWAR, or the adverse effect wage rate, is the wage that all H-2A workers have to be paid. And it is designed to be higher than the minimum wage or the prevailing agricultural wage in the state. And so for 2024, the AWAR was $18.18. So if we think about the average wage in that sector, it was about $15, it's about $3 more per worker per hour. And so they come at a high cost. Now, if you can get an equipment operator, you might actually be getting a better deal, but those workers are a little bit more rare in the program. So
this is an Outlook conference, so what's the outlook for H-2A?
So the H-2A program, from a use standpoint, I don't see that changing at all. From a policy standpoint, that's a whole other conversation. I think that there's going to be significant talk around both potentially changing the scale of the program and also, which would be potentially harmful for producers if policy shakes out that way, but also conversations about slowing the growth in the AWAR, because there's been a lot of pushback about the rate at which it is growing and whether or not that's a sustainable wage for operators to be able to pay their workers.
For those who don't know, when I'm not conducting interviews, I'm actually being interviewed by media. And after the election, I got quite a few calls as the media started to place together what mass deportation would mean for the agriculture sector here in Ohio. Those are tough questions to answer, but luckily I'll be asking the questions this time instead of answering them.
Oh, good.
Undocumented worker numbers in ag, what do they look like right now?
So nationally, the rate is about 45% just for crop workers. If we were, unfortunately, good nationally representative survey data for livestock workers doesn't exist. This is one of my longstanding gripes. It would be great if we could get something to get a better handle on what the state of workers in the livestock industry are, but among crop workers, it's about 45%. I think if we included livestock, the share would be much higher. So we already know 45% of crop workers lack legal authorization to work across the country as a whole.
So the trickiest question I got through the media that I'm going to give to Dr. Jodlowski is, how do we fill the void, right? If we do see mass deportation and we see a lot of those people that work in agriculture in Ohio, what happens next?
Honestly, the immediate response is an increase in wages, which at the rate we are already seeing wage growth, that is going to be, I think, very difficult to bear for many operations, particularly in the horticulture industry where margins are really small and labor needs are really high. So I think the first response is going to be try and increase wages to attract domestic workers or foreign-born workers who have legal authorization. I think we're going to see H-2A use really, really take off. It's already been, like I said, it's basically a straight vertical line now in terms of worker use. I think it's going to go up even more. That's assuming nothing happens to that program, which also has been part of policy conversations as well. And then ultimately, I think this is the impact that policymakers should be trying to avoid, is that firms will have to either switch production into something that's either less labor intensive or requires less seasonal labor needs, or production is going to contract and we're going to see fewer acres especially in these labor intensive crops.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how farmers have been through quite a hellish year, for lack of a better term, with the drought here in Ohio.
Yep.
Crop prices are lower. We've seen net farm income decrease of close to 30% over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Added worker costs aren't going to help that equation one bit.
Not at all.
Margaret Jodlowski with Ohio State here at the campus's Ag Policy and Outlook Conference. Thank you for the insights. Appreciate it. And we'll talk about this again next year, and it'll be a completely different conversation.
I'm sure it will. It's great to be here, Ty. Thanks.
Find previous podcasts at ohiofarmbureau.org and search podcasts.